much and for this kind introduction, and also for the invitation. It's fantastic to be here in the company of so many people that understand so much about the topic I wish to know better of. My lecture will be in some ways a direct continuation of Michael's lecture. He was dealing with large bodies of people, perhaps making large impacts, and I'll be dealing with individuals, and rather privileged individuals, and then I'll try to deal with small groups of aristocrats and how do they do it. But before that, I'll make some remarks about migration and being a refugee as a part of a process which is both personal but also international. So, of course, as everybody knows, whoever read Bertolt Brecht, that you know that to be a refugee, or if somebody had experience from him or family or watching other people, that this is a complex emotional process which involves both the individual as of society. I brought this slide from the British Columbia Refugee Sponsorship Training Program, which is an amazing program that happens in British Columbia, in which people are actually looking at how to help refugees from a government point of view. It's still mimicking very much some of the phases you see in Bertolt Brecht's poem about how you are still thinking that you're in somewhere between these two worlds, and you keep waiting for the time that you will return. The media response to the refugee crisis in Syria and other refugee crises have left several amazing projects of documentation of the objects of refugees. These ones are of Syrian and Afghan refugees that are found in the Idomeni camp, border of Greece and Macedonia. And you can see, I can give you the link afterwards, the amazing and, let's say, very personal documentation of what they actually brought from home, which is after this sea passage, which is very traumatic, and after the land passage is, of course, very, very personal, but also very, very limited assemblage. Trying to return to the realms of studies of interaction, I would look at the fleeing of refugees, or the flight of refugees, as a part of an interaction process, or interregional interaction process, that also can be evaluated through some interaction variables, such as the number of people involved in the interaction, the duration of the interaction. We talked, and many people talked about this cultural distance between the cultures involved in the interaction. The segment of people involved, today I'm about to speak about the higher let's say, and more privileged segment of population. The balance of power between the cultures involved in the interaction, which is, of course, in the case of refugees, very one-sided. And the level of pluralism and tolerance within the interaction society. And I would argue that this is true. This is based on historical and anthropological studies, but I would say that that forced migration is a wide phenomenon, and each event is given different values for each of these interaction parameters, and they are affecting the adaptation strategies and their relations to the material cultures and their reflection in material culture, which is something that should be investigated further. Yesterday, in our keynote lecture, we heard that a lot of what refugees are thinking and interested in is finding a meaning in their existence and attempts to reconnect to the pre-exile situation by changing and modifying their immediate environment, even if this is a short-term residence solution or shelter. While they're eager on the other side to return home, but at the same time they're torn with also the need to adapt to a new social and even sometimes ecological and climatic situation. Connecting to the excellent lecture of Michael before, I wanted to see, before I'm dealing with the individuals, I wanted to see what is the impact of mass deportation and mass depopulations of the Assyrians. And there's a huge amount of literary sources about that. And in the southern Levant, there's a lot of surveys and excavation conducted, and the result is actually very, very pessimistic. For example, you have the Sargon II text, which is speaking about the conquest and the deportation of the Samaritans, the people from the kingdom of Israel, and he counted almost 28,000 people that he exiled. Two of them, of course, using them as a resource. 200 of them are becoming charioteers. The rest are just settled in the midst of Assyria. And then he's bringing other population to be settled in Samaria. And it's actually larger population. And these things keep happening. It's also happening in the days of Pileser III, and it's also happening in the days of Sennacherib later. And what are the material evidence for all these new tens of thousands of deportees that are coming from all the areas of the Babylonian and Assyrian Empire? And the answer is very, very, very little. All the pottery in the affected areas is local pottery, continuing trends in the of the Iron Age. The only few examples are personal, something that can be described as personal effects or amulets, such as this Pazuzu amulet, again, to protect against the so-called hand of Nergal, because Pazuzu is the god of pestilence. And there's another tablet from Bet She'an, there's another one from Megiddo, and there's the demon Lamashatu from a tablet from Tel Burna. So it's amazing that all these tens of thousands of people are being brought here by force, being settled in the province, the province of the Assyrian province, and we see very, very little of them. The deportees from Lachish, by the way, please look that these people are living with all their belongings on a cart. So at least some of these belongings should be found someday somewhere in Assyria where they were exiled to. With this unoptimistic message, we are going to the individual cases, and I brought two cases of perhaps an autobiography of refugees of high status that are speaking about how they became refugees. And it is lovely because it's actually showing the feeling of these people. So Mr. Idrimi, that was an Amorite prince of the early part of the late Bronze Age, he was born in Aleppo. And in the house of my father, a bad thing happened. Probably there was a coup d'etat, and they fled to the Amorites, the people of Emau. And they settled in Emau, and then he was not happy there. And he, on his own, he took his horse and joined first the pastoralists, and afterwards he went to the land of Canaan, and he settled among people that were probably expatriates or even refugees from Aleppo and from countries that he knew. And they immediately recognized him, and he became their leader. And for 7 years he stayed along the Chaviru. The Chaviru are the displaced class. And after 7 years, he acquired ships, loaded soldiers, approached the land of Mukish, the land of the Amuk, reached dry land in front of Mount Chazi, the huge Mount Cassius, and he marched inland, and he was welcomed by the people of Alalach and became king again. So this is the happy end. But we can analyze this history according also to the interaction parameters and see that the number of people involved is 1, duration of interaction 7 years, segment of population elite, level of tolerance of whole society, probably very, very high, that enabled him to do all of these. And you can see how he's moving from one place to the other. That is, numerous events of some of it is displacement, some of it is deliberate will to migrate are occurring through these 7 years. And it's showing the complex personal history that must have occurred in various places. I will not yet talk about the material cultural implication of this, but we must know that he is wandering within the same cultural area, okay? And within the same people, more or less. The second case, of course, is famous to, and well known to everybody. It's the 20th century BC Sinuhe report, or Sinuhe. Is it a historical novel, or it actually was a tomb inscription? The Egyptologists still cannot make their minds, but it became very, very favorable with the Egyptians on the school text, because everybody wanted to hear the story about, just like everybody wanted to hear the story about Tarzan, they want to hear the story about the Egyptians who went away, became an exile, gone native, and then returned to die in Egypt because there's no place like home. So Sinuhe over here news about the death of Amenemhat I. There was a palace coup, and Amenemhat I is killed by the bodyguards, and he decides to flee, and he's running towards the desert, and he's been saved by the pastoralist, again the pastoralist component. He's moving from one place of the other. He's going to Byblos, and then he meets other Egyptians, but he decides it's not safe enough for him. So he runs away and goes to the innermost place that is still his civilization, where he thinks, but it's very far from the reach of Egypt, and he's going to the land of Upper Retenu, which is somewhere either in southern Syria or the Golan or place like this, and he's meeting the Amorite ruler Amo-Inshi. He becomes a tribal chief. He actually wins a duel with a local hero. His children, he's marrying the daughter of Amo-Inshi. His children are becoming chieftains. That is, his children are already integrated into the Amorite tribal system, and each one have their own clan. And then when everything is getting very, very nice for him, he is having this Bertolt Brecht moment that he's very, very homesick. He's getting old and he's getting very homesick. And Senwesser I, the son of Amenemhat I, is sending him a message. Listen, do you want to be buried among these people? Come to Egypt. Do you want to die and somebody will put a hide on you, a hide of an animal on you, and put a tumulus of stones upon you? No, you should come to Egypt. And he returns to Egypt, pardon, given an estate, and of course a burial place, which is the most important thing. So that's supposed to be the happy end of this. What is interesting about this, that can we, and I thought about both Idrimi and both of Sinuhe, and I thought, can we identify them in the landscape? Because these are people that are powerful, that are resourceful, that are extremely self-reliant, but they will leave absolutely no archaeological evidence, because the moment that Sinuhe is escaping, probably has his weapons with him, etc., but he's been fully, let's say, I would even use the word integrated into Amorite society, and he becomes a part of the family, and he's probably dressed, and he uses the same arms as the other people. So maybe some small things will remain, but his children, I'm sure, his children, if they are bilingual or not, that will be a very interesting question, but his children will not look like the Egyptians. And by the way, only he returns. His children does not return. The children have a fantastic life in Upper Retenu, together with, their grandfather Amo-Inshi. So this is another question which relates to the story of Sinuhe. And no doubt other many people, Egyptian expatriates, that were traveling across the Levant in the Middle and Late Bronze Age. Looking at both stories or recent tales or recent accounts of refugees, one can think about several stages in it which I can differ significantly. And examples of possible manifestation in material culture of solitary refugees or exiles. First of all, you have the trigger event, or trigger events followed by an escape. Survival in transit, further loss of possessions that are connected with the survival in transit. Sometimes acquiring of survival kit, that is, material culture items that are connected with the immediate state of danger that I can think about. These life vests and about other things that are needed for this. Then you have short-term solutions, and in transit again, which is further loss of possession, but still trying to maintain the items of symbolic value, not necessarily of high monetary value. Then you have medium-term solutions, adaptations, to some degree establishment of community ties, and this can happen in a refugee camp, it can happen in a shelter, it can happen in this medium-term solution when you're using the local material culture, not necessarily in the same way as locals, as was so nicely said yesterday by our keynote speakers, and sometimes attempt to replicate some of the original material culture, food, clothing, through local production or trade, or trying to do some innovation connecting with the cultural memory. Then you have, of course, the step, if you're fortunate to have long-term planning and nostalgia and contact and establishing of long-term solution for residents, etc. It's extremely complicated, and each phase would leave a different mark on the material culture assemblage. And it will be really, really difficult to see it. Returning to Sinuhe, and he's fighting this hero of Rechenu. This is a very important moment in his life. He's about to die in the morning. Everybody are gathering to see. And he spent the night stretching his bow and sharpening his dagger, which is, of course, giving him some more of an Egyptian weapon type feeling. And his opponent is having a battle axe and javelins, etc. But still, these are things that you can find also with Amorite rulers. So when you have a tomb like this in Gesher, which have the javelin, or warrior tomb, which have the javelin, the duckbill axe, same type of axe that's seen here in the Ben Hassan tomb, showing people that are coming to Egypt from the Levant, and a javelin. Can we ever find a tomb that may belong to such an expatriate, or we will see it differently? Some of the objects found in tombs during the Middle and Late Bronze Age Canaan were related to emissaries or to expatriates, or can also be used to look at exiles. But of course, this is a process of equifinality. That is, the end result of various interactions can be into the position of these very, very rare and foreign objects inside the tombs. These are seals, Hittite seals found in various Late Bronze Age contexts in Tel Nami, in Megiddo, and in Tel El South. The most fascinating one is in Tel El South. It's a couple, probably a married couple, which both have rings written in Luvian, and they're called Zuzua and Anna. And it's a lovely thing, but who would know if Zuzuna and Anna were actually expats, they were emissaries, exiles, or actually somebody got their rings as second-hand goods in some not garage sale, but from a trading expedition done somewhere. So if we are looking at, let's say, low visibility, small impact interactions, and that are yielding these extraordinary finds, we should know that it is actually can come from various sources of various interactions. One of them can be exiles or refugees. This is taking this a bit close to home in the site that Eric and I are excavating. This was found at a previous expedition at Tomb 902, which all the scarabs in Calvary are lovely, but all of them are locally made and do not have Hyksos king names. And there's one tomb in which you have two of the same king, and this is Yakebamu, known very well from other places, but that's the only place in Israel which you have two of his scarabs. So far in the north, Reichelt suggested that these are emissaries from Egypt that are to the king of Calvary that were buried there, but of course, how would one know about that? So, while I'm a bit pessimistic about our ability to identify single refugees, even if they are coming from the most noble of origins and they are very resourceful and they're very, let's say, reliable in maintaining their identity, I'm slightly more optimistic in our ability to identify slightly larger groups of aristocrats that are traveling together with populace as maritime migrants or maritime refugees in the Iron Age and later, also the Bronze Age. One may quote the flight of King Loli of Sidon and his family, so beautifully shown in the Palace of Sennacherib, and it's depicting the event in which at least 12 biramas, both war galleys and all-round merchant ships, have been traveling from Sidon towards Cyprus together with the women, and there's see the veiled women on top, and somewhere here there's also a child. So it's a displacement of a large aristocratic group with their possession going towards Cyprus, and such an expedition will probably leave a larger archaeological impact. Yesterday, Yanis Ramilakis was speaking about refugees hotspots in the Eastern Aegean. This has not changed, and I will bring several examples of these as the recurring hotspots for the flight of refugees from the mainland towards the Aegean. Those of us who are classicists, of course, are well aware of the flight of the people of Phocaea that are fleeing from the advancing Persians, and represented by Harpagos, the son of the tyrant. And they placed their women, children, and possessions in their pentacontas, that is, old galleys of 50 oars, and they're all sailing from Phocaea to Chios. Then they're finding temporary shelter. Then they want to build a nearby, to acquire the nearby Inusus Islands, refused by the people of Chios, and then their ordeal is really beginning because they're all going to Corsica, to Cyrnus, to settle there, and then they're becoming refugees again when they have to evacuate Cyrnus and go to Alia. So you see this continuity of people moving from one place to the other in various stages. Almost identical one is happening much before that, and this is the 3rd or 4th year of Mursili II, when he is pursuing the king of Arzawa, Uchatziti, and he ran away from him. His city was Apasha, which is of course Ephesus, and he's fleeing away by boat. And immediately after, he ran away across the sea to the islands and remained there. So I can only imagine that if he's running from Ephesus, he's probably going to Samos or something of his sort. And with his children. And then immediately this triggered a massive movement. Some of the people are going to the mountains, and some of them are going over the sea. So you have a huge population displacement that is created by it. And he died there, but his people were still there during this time. So if somebody can find at some point a significant population surge during this time in Samos and the island, that would be very, very interesting. And I think it could be actually archaeologically possible. Indictment of Maduata. Maduata was a very bad boy, and he did terrible things, and Al-Muwanda I was saving him. from the hand of Atrayusha, the Mycenaean, and then he did bad things, and then he was dislocated by the Hittites to a new place to save him, and then he was bad again, and then he ran away, and then he was... So all this time there's this bandit, Maduata, that is moving from one place to the other together with his family in Anatolia, and that we know where he was going, so that this can be found. What I didn't say about the exploits of Uhatziti is immediately afterwards there was a victory, immediately afterwards the victory of Mushiri II on Arzawa. Mushiri II brought something like 15,000 refugees to the Silver City, to Hattusha. So this, to bring 15,000 people to Hattusha that are speaking Luvian, okay, and have a more Mediterranean culture, and you know when it happened, unless I think this should be archaeologically visible if you would look at the right phases of Hattusha. Returning to the terra firma of the 12th century, you can see these things in the displacement of people or deliberate migration or other interaction along the Mediterranean in places such as Emporio and Chios, which was before that, in the 13th century, it was a place of Anatolian material culture. And then in this beautiful bay on top of this Acropolis, without fortification, you have two levels of Aegean-style habitation. And they're destroyed violently, two of them. So is this a case of maritime refugees, or is this a isolated maritime community in the Light Helladic 3C that are moving from outside the scope of the Aegean material culture and planting their place there? This must have been an organized maritime venture in which people are actually crossing from perhaps the Cyclades, perhaps other parts, in order to get to this remote area. And it's obviously a very small community and very unstable one because it's been destroyed twice in a short time. So it was probably also a threatened community. Can we know if these were refugees or if this was an evacuation organized by a local chieftain or by somebody who wanted, like the Greek oikistes of the 8th and 7th century, to become small kings in a new place? This is unknown, but this is how these things look like. Another case of a fortified Acropolis, and I raised all the Cretan examples from my lecture because all of them are now very well known. But another one that was not mentioned yesterday is Koukounariès and Paros. Because somebody in this beautiful bay of Naoussa, there's this huge granite rock of Koukounariès, which is barren, although Koukounariès should be a nice pine tree. And in late Helladic 3C early, somebody is building their monumental structure, excavated by Schilardi, now published in increments by Robert Cole, and including very nice imported pottery, some of it from the Argolid, and including ivory, and including bronze. And all of this has been violently destroyed so much that it's like hacked pieces of pottery, and there are remains of both people and livestock in this corridor between the excavated areas. This is the facade, which is very, very monumental. So this may be another example. Demetrius Schilardi was arguing that this is a clan that came from the mainland and settled there, and afterwards a rival clan, that was the complete story, a rival clan from Naxos coming and wiping them out, etc. Which is okay. I mean, if somebody is reading Archaeology and think that whatever Archaeology was doing in his life was to fight with the people of Naxos from Paros, fighting with the people of Naxos, then running away from the Samothracians, that is a reliable thing to think about. But if we're looking about a settlement that is being conducted and built by a group of either deposed refugees or people that want to become small kings in a new place. Indeed, Kukunaries is an idea. I would finish with this very evocative, to connect us, very evocative images that are connected us to some of the presentations last time. This is, of course, the memorial to Walter Benjamin in the border of Spain and France, showing his ascent or descent and tragic suicide after being caught in the process of being a refugee. Thank you very much.